Boker Tov, Ambassador Regev, how are you?
Boker Tov, Rabbi. I'm good, and I hope you are too.
It's a real privilege. Thank you so much for making the time for this meeting. It's lovely to see you. I hope you and the family are all keeping well. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning, our guest needs no introduction. We're on with Ambassador Regev, who's been the ambassador to the United Kingdom since 2016. In fact, we both moved to St. John's Wood around a similar time. Prior to that, the ambassador was the chief spokesman for the Prime Minister of Israel from 2007 to 2015. And of course, a very dear friend of St. John's Wood community. We have a seat for you in the front row, and we love it when you come and visit, and we are grateful to you. We hope you will visit us more when we reopen. How are you keeping at this crazy time?
So you're right, Rabbi. It is a crazy time because rabbis and ambassadors have something in common, is that our job is to meet people, to talk, to shake hands, to do events, yes? And all of that is impossible under these coronavirus restrictions. So to a large extent, I've had to reinvent myself and do a lot of these sort of digital platforms as we are doing now. It's obviously a difficult period, but we have to make ourselves relevant and find new ways to carry out our job. And that's why we're having this conversation now. Not my first. I can also tell you that we've been doing these sorts of conversations with the British government on all sorts of issues, including sensitive ones. And we are finding ways that despite the crisis, despite the need for social distancing, that we can do the jobs that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very grateful to you. You know, unfortunately, Israel is used to crises. And over the years, they've had lots of experience, sadly. It's a relief to see the relatively low numbers of fatalities and casualties in Israel due to coronavirus. Perhaps you could share with us some of the background to the response of the state of Israel and the current situation, and how Israel is combating what's going on.
So you're right, Rabbi. We've managed so far, thank goodness, to keep casualties very, very low. As we speak, there are less than 200 Israelis who died of coronavirus. And if you compare that to the number in the UK, even if you look at the per capita basis, we're doing quite well in Israel. In fact, if I can share with you a statistic that is shocking, but more British Jews have died from coronavirus than Israelis. Now that's an amazing statistic. And I'm not sure I can explain it. All I know that it's true. We have successfully managed to contain the death rate. Now, how did we do this? I'm sure, we're still playing the game and we're still ongoing. Yes, it's not over. And it's too early to do conclusions. But, and we've all been learning on the job. Yes, this has surprised us all. But there's no doubt that Israel was one of the first countries on the planet to take it very seriously and adopt very difficult issues. I remember in the first days of this crisis, my colleague in Seoul, South Korea, was called in to the Korean Foreign Ministry, and he was asked the following question. He said, "We're such friendly countries, we're allies, we're two democracies, we have a very good relationship. Why is it that you've prevented Koreans landing in Israel? Why have you prevented Korean planes landing in Israel?" And the answer then wasn't obvious. He said, "Of course we're friends, but we wanted to protect our people." And it's true that Israel was one of the first countries to impose flight restrictions. And we were one of the first to impose other restrictions. And it's possible that our cautiousness on these issues, which at the beginning maybe were ahead of the curve, weren't understood by many, have paid off.
It's amazing. You know, I have two brothers who live in Israel, and hearing reports of what was going on Seder night, where the whole of Israel was told to stay in their homes. It was almost biblical. The leaders restricting travel. And some say, you know, there's an economic effect as well. Unemployment is high and the restrictions have gone too far. And, you know, to a certain extent, there's a concern as well that Israel perhaps using anti-terrorism tracking technology. Does that affect democracy? What's your view on that? Do you think they've gone too far? Do you think it affects democracy? Perhaps you could share with us your perspective.
So I have no aspiration to tell you that I'm sure we have all the answers, because I'm not sure we do have all the answers. This is work in process, and this epidemic has taken us all by surprise, and we're on the job, we're learning as the days go on, yes? So to say that Israel has all the answers, I don't believe that. I do think we're doing some things right. Of course, one has to be very sensitive to issues to do with human rights. But I think our overriding priority here has been to save lives. And by using some of the technologies developed by the security establishment to track the disease can be very successful in limiting the spread of this terrible virus. That's very important. But you raised the question before about Pesach, which was very strange, because Pesach is the time when we all get together with all our families. And where most of us sit at Seder tables, and there's, more than 20 people, grandparents and uncles and aunts and extended families, yes? And this year, for the first time ever, yes, everyone's just at home with the people that they live with. And it's a huge change. And now the Prime Minister has called upon Israel's Muslim community. They said, you must adopt over Ramadan the same restrictions that the Jewish Israelis adopted over Pesach. And next week, we have Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, yes? And there, routinely, every year, you'd have Israelis en masse going to the cemeteries to pay their respects to loved ones. We all hug the bereaved families. It's very much part of Israel's national calendar. It's part of who we are as a people. And yet, we've asked people not to go to the cemeteries. We've asked people to remember their loved ones in private. And this is, once again, for the families of fallen soldiers, for the bereaved, this will be very, very difficult. But these restrictions are necessary if we want to overcome the disease. And I think people understand that.
Sure. Tell me, Mr. Ambassador, I want to ask you, I remember very fondly when I was a student and a young professional, watching your incredible coverage, whether it was the 2006 Lebanon War, the 2008 Gaza War, and then moving on, 2012 and 2014 Gaza conflict. You're an incredible spokesman for the Jewish people, for the people of Israel globally. How did you get into politics? What inspired you? What was your big break? There'll be young professionals who'll be watching this who are very inspired by you and your leadership for the Jewish people. How did it all begin?
By accident. Rabbi, I was doing a doctorate at Tel Aviv University in political science. I did a master's degree in political science at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and I'd started my doctorate in Tel Aviv. And I'd finished all the compulsory coursework, and I'd got all my research material together, and I was stuck. I was intellectually stuck. I didn't have the motivation to move on. And a lot of academics probably know what I'm talking about, yes? But then during that period of being stuck and being frustrated that I wasn't motivated to do what I needed to do to get the doctorate done, there was an ad in the newspaper to take the entrance exam for the Israeli Foreign Service. And I went to take the exam. And my career in public service started, I suppose, you could say, my career in government service started then. Had I been a more successful academic, yes, had I been on top of my game, so to speak, in the research that I was doing, maybe I would never have gone on the path that I did, that led to me becoming ambassador. Having said that, I was always very, very interested in politics. I remember when I did high school, I went to a Jewish day school in Melbourne, Australia called Mount Scopus. I think it used to be, maybe still is, the largest Jewish day school in the diaspora. And they didn't have political science as part of the subjects for matriculation, for final year. And so I remember I went to night school to the local regular high school to do political science because they didn't have it at the Jewish school. And at university, I studied political science, and I was always interested in activism. I was president of the local JSOC at my university. In other words, I was always very, very interested.
Talking about how you got into politics and politics in general, we know in the last 12 months there's been 3 elections in Israel, possibility of a 4th one as well. It's a bit of a challenge. The world are looking at Israel as a beacon of light, and they're having a challenge with democracy, with the very basics of elections. What comments do you have to say on what's going on, and how do you see this ending up?
So the first point, Rabbi, that needs to be made is that it's important to look at the half glass that's full, and that is that Israel is a vibrant democracy.
Sure.
Maybe having 3 elections within a 12-month period is too much, yes? But in a region which is plagued by despotism, by autocracies, yes? Israel is a beacon of freedom and democracy. Yes, we're the only country that regularly has elections and people vote for a parliament that actually matters, that actually has power, that actually elects a government. And so I think all Jews everywhere can be proud that Israel is a vibrant and robust democracy. Now, I agree having 3 elections within a year was probably too much. But that was because the Israeli people elected parliaments that couldn't create a government. Now I'm glad to tell you it appears that is behind us. The leaders of the 2 largest parties, Benjamin Netanyahu from the Likud and Benny Gantz from Blue and White, have made a deal, and which means there won't be 4th elections. I believe we'll be having a new government in the next couple of days. It's a government that's based on parity, a government where for the first year and a half, Benjamin Netanyahu will serve as prime minister, and the second year and a half, it will pass on to Benny Gantz. It's a relationship of 50-50 between the 2 parties and their allies. And the idea is to form a national unit government that first and foremost can effectively deal with the corona crisis. I think the people of Israel did not want a 4th election. And I think on the whole, though of course in Israel everyone's got their opinion, but I think on the whole in the polls that I've read, people are supporting this national unity government, which will come into office in the next couple of days.
Fantastic. I want to ask you, one, I guess, final question. Next week is Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, 2 very important days. I was brought up in a passionate Zionist family. My father always imbued in us a love of Israel. My aunt made Aliyah in 1948, and in fact, I'm named after my second cousin. I'm holding a picture of him here, Yoni Golker, who fell in Milchemet Yom HaKippurim, in the Yom Kippur War. So for me, it has a very, very special place in my heart. I want to know from you, what does Yom HaZikaron mean to you? What does Yom HaAtzmaut mean to you? And perhaps a little bit of a reflection on the future for Israel. What are the biggest threats and opportunities in the years to come? And how do you feel about that?
So obviously there are 2 very important days in the Jewish calendar. Yom HaZikaron, we always must remember, everyone has their own grief. Yes, you have members of your family. Most Israelis have members of their family or loved ones and people that they know who've paid the price in the various wars. And we should remember the larger picture, which is that Israel came at a price. And that if we weren't willing to defend our country, we wouldn't have a country. I mean, David Ben-Gurion declares Israel's independence in May 1948, the day the British mandate ended. And that night, the Egyptian Air Force already bombed Tel Aviv. And on the Shabbat, on the following day, all the neighboring countries invaded. Lebanon and Syria from the north, Iraq and Transjordan from the east, the Egyptians from the south. The attempt by the Arab League was to kill the Jewish state at birth. And if we survived and if we prevailed, it's only because we were willing to fight to protect our new country. And that, of course, took a price. And the price was in young men and women who died fighting for Israel's freedom. And we should never, ever forget that when people visit Israel. When they tour the country, when they go to Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, when they open that, people must remember that every inch of Israel had to be fought for. And that we can never pay our debt to those who fell and to the bereaved families, their loved ones, who for every day for them is Yom HaZikaron. And of course, all the maimed and the injured.
Sure.
And when we talk about injured today, we're also more aware than ever before about the psychological injuries that conflict and warfare can bring. But I'm not saying, I want to say the following, and it's important. Israel has not just survived, and many people thought Israel wouldn't survive. Yes, the American government at the time told Ben-Gurion, don't declare independence because you won't survive. The Arab states will invade and we're not coming to help you, yes? The fact that we overcame and survived, you could say, Rabbi, is a miracle.
Sure.
But Israel has more than survived. Israel has flourished. Israel has succeeded. Israel is an amazing, amazing success story by any objective criteria. Today, we're 9 million Israelis. We've got a high-tech, increasingly prosperous economy. We're at the center of so much scientific and technological innovation. We're a powerhouse, yes, when it comes to technology. Israeli culture is being reborn, Hebrew culture, Jewish culture. Rabbi, there was an article earlier this week, I think it was in the Telegraph, telling people who are staying at home and watching TV because they're self-isolating that there are all these wonderful programs made in Israel, right? Now, if British people are watching Israeli-made television, it means there really is a cultural vitality in Israel, which is very, very, very exciting. And to think of it, Rabbi, we commemorated last week Yom HaShoah, yes? Where have the Jewish people come from in the last 75 years? I mean, in my father's generation, the Jews were helpless, defenseless, stateless, begging others to protect us, begging others to let us in. Today, the Jewish people are free and sovereign and strong. We can protect ourselves. We can defend our own people. That is something very, very important. That's a real revolution in the life of the Jewish people. And it's something that I'm immensely aware of, and I'm proud to be the ambassador of the Jewish state here in the United Kingdom.
Absolutely. You know, I had the privilege of learning in yeshiva in Jerusalem for 3 years, and I remember my father putting his arm around me and saying to me, don't take it for granted. His grandparents would have dreamed to have gone to Israel as freely as we do. And I remember also a Rabbi of mine in the yeshiva that I had, who was a man in his 70s, and when he would get on a bus and he would see a chayal or a chayelet come on the bus, he would stand up for them and he would insist they sit down. And he would say, we have to have hakarat hatov, we have to have appreciation for the state of Israel, for the modern miracle that we live through. And listening to you, it inspires me, and I hope it will inspire our listeners. Please God, we should meet in good health in St. John's Wood Synagogue soon. We look forward to welcoming you back, and I wish you ongoing success with everything you do. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Rabbi. I wish you and all your congregants the best of health, that this should be behind us soon, that we can return to normal community life and normal life as a whole. We've overcome many plagues. Yes, in Pesach we talked about 10 plagues. We've overcome them all. We'll overcome this one too. Shalom to you all.